Baltimore State Attorney Marilyn Mobley just got federally indicted for a whole slew of charges, 4 counts in total. We're talking about pandemic relief fraud. We've got mortgage fraud, vacation rental schemes. It's got the whole thing. Let's take a look at the indictment itself. You can see this was filed January 13th, 2022 at the Baltimore Clerk U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland. You got several different charges. We got perjury under 18 U.S. Code 1621 and false statement on a loan application. Now, there's a total of 4 different counts in total. We'll go through them. You'll see it's 19 pages long. We're not going to go through all the legalese. We'll just take a look at the juicy stuff. But this is the United States of America, the feds, versus Marilyn J. Mosby. We got to take a look at who this woman is. You can see here over from Wikipedia, she is the 25th state's attorney of Baltimore. So she's the youngest chief prosecutor of any American city. And so you take a look at this and you say, wait a minute, Rob, she's a prosecutor. She's supposed to be putting the bad guys in jail, not becoming one of them. She's not supposed to be charged with perjury types of crimes where she's being dishonest, crimes of moral turpitude. What's going on here? You can see she's an American politician. She's a lawyer, been the state attorney for Baltimore since 2015, so been some time there. Mosby served as a law clerk and the assistant state attorney from Baltimore from 2005 2011. And in 2013, that's when she announced to run. Beat somebody in the primary by 55% of the vote. Faced no opposition in the general. Of course, from the Democratic Party, in fact, she had a big endorsement from somebody that you remember, I'm sure.
When we march and we shout about what we need to do to reform the criminal justice system, we better understand that we got to march and shout with our paychecks and all of the work that we can do to actually make sure that somebody like Marilyn Mosby gets reelected into that office. To not only get convictions, but have convictions. There are a lot of people who are highly critical of her because she heard the voices of the people and said, even if I can't win, I'm gonna do the right thing. It's gonna be rough, it's gonna be tough. She cannot fail, and I know she will not fail.
Ew. Uh-oh. All right. Well, so that's Kamala Harris, of course, the vice president. Don't see too much from her these days because she's largely ineffective. But that was out when she was a senator, of course, talking on behalf of Marilyn Mosby. And Marilyn Mosby, you may remember because there was a case back in 2015 about the death of Freddie Gray. Back in 2015, Mosby, back then prosecutor, endorsed by Kamala Harris, charged 6 police officers who had arrested Freddie Gray prior to his death, charged him with a number of different violations, criminal charges, second-degree murder, involuntary manslaughter. Several people, including David Jarrow, said that Mosby quite possibly overcharged the officers. Says that while nothing is absolutely atypical, this seems like it may have been a little much. And it turns out it was. Third trial ended in 2016. Officer Goodson, one of the 6, acquitted on all counts. Number of others saying that she never had probable cause to charge these officers in the first place. And then after they were charged, she repeatedly withheld evidence, which is basically, the most scumbag thing you could ever do. Repeatedly withheld evidence from officers and their defense attorneys. So 5 of 6 police officers charged with filing lawsuits against her for malicious prosecution, defamation, and invasion of privacy. So has sort of gone a little bit astray from the ambitions of justice that Kamala was talking about. But Mosby is saying she's very, very innocent. She's going to be fighting this thing and clearing her name. She did respond to this. Here's how it sounded.
I also need citizens who I am blessed to serve to know that I am innocent of the charges that have been levied against me, and I intend to fight with every ounce of energy within my being to prove my innocence and to clear my name.
All right, so we'll check back in with her. She's going to give us a lot more there. She's going to tell us a little bit kind of about why she thinks she is the victim of this very unfair investigation. And so now that we know a little bit more about her, we know what she's been involved in. Freddie Gray, endorsed by Kamala Harris, somebody who is supposed to be this new up-and-coming young prosecutor, reform the justice system. Let's take a look at the indictment. Count 1, we can see here, perjury. This is coming back from May 2020. And back in context, okay, Donald Trump still president. Don't have the election yet. We're right in the thick of COVID. Remember that the national lockdown just took place on March 13th was the declaration of the national emergency. And so we're in that context. Financial hardship withdrawal is what we're talking about here in count one. And back then, she was still elected. She was serving as the city attorney for the state attorney for the Baltimore City in 2014, reelected 2018. The city of Baltimore pays her for her job, includes the role there. She's got an employee, has a participating plan, a 457 plan, so sort of like a retirement plan. Money and earnings are not taxed until they're withdrawn. So they pay into this fund, you save a bunch of money, no taxes on that money, and you can begin taking distributions by the age of 70 and a half years old. 70 and a half, she's obviously not 70 and a half. She wants that money, doesn't she? Guess what? The Coronavirus Act, the CARES Act, created a new withdrawal option that in calendar year 2020, if you were impacted by the vid. And so she wants to take advantage of this. She's the attorney general, the state attorney for Baltimore. And so Mosby then emailed a City of Baltimore Retirement Savings Deferred Compensation Plan COVID-related distribution request over to Nationwide. Nationwide has the funds. They're taking, they're sort of collecting all the monies. And so she says, oh, this act just passed. I'm going to send this over and get an early withdrawal, one-time request of $40,000. It's from her employee retirement account. She'll get that money and have some very nice tax savings, and she'll be able to get it early. No problems. Because of COVID, they sort of wrote this into the rules. You get some benefits because of the hardship, allegedly, that she went through. So when she sent this form out, she says this. Okay, the CARES Act permits qualifying members to receive a distribution. I understand I may receive a distribution of up to $100,000 if I am a qualified individual. And she writes, by making this request, I acknowledge that the amount of the distribution which I may get from the city is limited to the amount of $100,000, and I'm not going to exceed this amount. It's an emergency, right? I need this money because of the pandemic. I further acknowledge that the City of Baltimore Deferred Compensation Plan is relying on my certifications in determining that I qualify for this distribution and that I will not exceed the limit. This is the honor system. It's saying if you're filling this form out and you sign off on this, I'm playing by the rules. She acknowledges, by signing this form, I certify that I meet at least one of the qualifications for a distribution as summarized below. On the form, it says, I have experienced adverse financial consequences stemming from the pandemic. This might include being quarantined, furloughed, or laid off, having reduced work hours, being unable to work due to a lack of childcare, closing or reduction of hours of a business I own or operate. These are the different qualifications. Marilyn Mosby is the state attorney for the city of Baltimore. And so does she have any of these issues? Did she have reduced work hours? Was she furloughed? Was she laid off? Was she unable to work because she couldn't have anybody care for her kids? Was she somebody who lost a business, closed a business, or reduced hours at her business? I would suspect not, but she filled the form out anyways. Maybe quarantine, I don't know. Let's see. Mosby signed this form under these additional acknowledgments. It says that she affirmed under penalty of perjury that these statements were true. But in fact, under paragraph 7, the indictment says Mosby has not experienced financial consequences as a result. She was not quarantined, furloughed, unable to not work, or didn't have her businesses operate or close. Her gross salary in 2020 was $247,000, never reduced at all. It was maintained. Got her biweekly paychecks, $9,100, and all of that led up to the request. So she was getting it consistently. There was no reduction. There was no financial consequences at all. She was getting paid consistently all the way up until May 2020. In fact, rather than experiencing a reduction in income, Mosby's gross salary increased over her gross salary in 2019, which back then was $238,772. So it goes from $238,000 up to $247,000. So year over year, it's actually up just under $10,000, which is not a financial hardship as she attested to on that form. Paragraph 9 says she submits the form on May 29th. Mosby received the electronic funds transfer, $36,000, Bank of America account. as a result of the form. She used it with the withdrawal toward a down payment for a vacation home in Kissimmee, Florida, that she purchased back in September 2020. Everybody's panicking. The world is melting down. This woman goes in, gets an advance on some funds that she was gobbling up, presumably is receiving those funds tax-free, takes that money, goes and buys a vacation home in Kissimmee, Florida. Purchased that just a couple months later. Not that we're going to dig into that because there's all sorts of problems with this loan application. In addition to getting the money under false pretenses, she is now falsifying the loan, as we'll see in a different count. Now, there was a written distribution at the time and place. She said, I consent and I affirm that these are true. But we can see here that she did, in fact, falsely state that she experienced adverse financial consequences, and that was not true. And therefore, they say that this is clearly an increase in revenue that she got her full gross salary, no hardship at all, and so she should be charged with perjury. Now, we mentioned the Kissimmee home in Florida. That leads to a second count because once you get started, you can't stop. Marilyn Mosby says, or the government says, the indictment here says that Marilyn Mosby had a little bit of tax problems. So back in March of 2020, before she got the cash advance using the CARES Act, IRS had placed a lien on her property. She owed tax money. Unpaid taxes in the amount of $45,000. Of course, all of this is allegedly, right? Allegedly owes $45,000. She just got an advance of $36,000, but she didn't over here, but she didn't pay that to the IRS. She bought a home in Kissimmee, Florida. IRS wants that money. On or about March 23rd, IRS sent Mosby and her husband a CP-71C notice. Little reminder, hey, you owe money. And now, because of the penalties and the interest, that puppy's going up. It's going up to $69,000 now. Between you and your husband, you better get it together. But they didn't. You can see we fast forward paragraph 14, we jump to the Kissimmee vacation home. After they receive notice from the IRS that you owe us $69,000, they go get the cash advance from Nationwide. They parlay that into a vacation home. So they signed an application for a $490,000 mortgage over from Cardinal Financial Company. Now, when you sign a mortgage, right, there are conditions. It's a pretty big note there. $500,000. Going to be some rules about that money. The application required Mosby to disclose her liabilities. Like, I don't know, do you have $70,000 in taxes you owe? Because if you do and the IRS comes and sees this house or something, this may expose us. Mosby did not disclose that she owed any amount of federal taxes. Further, in response to the question, specifically on the form, Miss Mosby, are you presently delinquent or in default on any federal debt, any other loan, mortgage, financial obligation, bond, loan guarantees? Mosby, no, says no. In fact, she was delinquent to the IRS for $45,000. There was a lien on her, against her, entered in on March 3rd of 2020. We can see that Kissimmee is here, located sort of inland Florida, just south of Orlando. About 13-hour drive away from where she resides or where she's supposed to be working in Baltimore. And so this was only one of two vacation homes that we'll talk to in another count. Paragraph 18 says that once Mosby wanted that property, she applied for the mortgage application and she executed a document entitled Second Home Rider, which stated it was supposed to be incorporated into the deed. The Second Home Rider says this: borrower will use and maintain the property, and that the borrower will maintain exclusive control over the ownership of the property. Right? Basically, you can't sublease this thing out. That means including short-term rentals. Okay, you can't turn this thing into an Airbnb. We're going to give you the mortgage. We're going to loan you this money so that you can go get this house, but you just can't turn this into a frat house. They say that this is something that is a part of the terms. Borrower will keep the property available primarily as a residence for personal use and enjoyment for at least 1 year after the date. You can't delegate this out. However, when she made that application back on September 2nd, 2020, the provider of the note didn't know that 1 week prior to closing on that Kimmissee vacation home, so right before that mortgage gets executed, on August 25th, just 1 week prior to that closing, Mosby executed an agreement with a vacation home management company, gave them control over the rental of the property that she just purchased. The agreement says she can't do that, but the agreement with this new management company says the manager will always be obligated to and have the right to offer the vacation home for rent during the time of this contract. Okay, so she's delegating that out to another company in violation of the loan agreement. And you can't do that because she made the agreement. First of all, she didn't disclose that she had all these extra liabilities, but she said, I will take this on condition that I will do that. And she gets better terms. And she knew that she was going to be violating those terms, allegedly, because according to the court, 1 week prior to signing that document, that would have reduced her interest rate, saying, I'm not going to turn this into an Airbnb. She was already turning it into an Airbnb. Figured nobody's going to know. They knew. Count 3 in the indictment, talking about another COVID hardship withdrawal. So she took the first chunk of money out to go buy the Kissimmee vacation home in Florida. And then December 2020 comes around and she needs some more money. This time, Mosby, she's going to do this whole thing again. She requested a withdrawal of $50,000 from her employee retirement account. She says, wow, man, that whole thing went real well. We're turning money hand over fist over there in Kissimmee. Nobody's even learned anything about this. No one's the wiser. Let's do it again. She wants to go and take 50 grand out again of the retirement account. The form, once again, consists of the same thing. I know that you're relying on my certifications in this, and I've been financially hurt as a result, and I can take up to $100,000. Says, yep, got it. Yep, I've experienced, she checks it right there. You can see it. Nice little check. I have experienced adverse financial consequences stemming from the virus. What were they? Marilyn, were you quarantined, furloughed, or laid off? Don't think so. Reduced work hours? No, you got a raise, I think. Were you unable to care for your children? Could be that. Don't know. Or could it be the closing or the reduction of the bit? No, it's none of those things. But she says, I affirm under penalties of perjury that this is true. Signed it, but they find that she has not, in fact, experienced any hardships. Her pay went up, just like we talked about, from $238,000 up to $247,000. Not a bad gig. But on December 31st, right before the end of that calendar year when the CARES Act is going to run out, boom, $45,000 lands in her nationwide bank account. And she took that money and bought another Longboat Key, Florida vacation home. Just gobbling up these properties. And guess what happened when she got that loan? False statements. You can see it again. Count 4. This is the final count. Longboat Key Vacation. Got a mortgage on this one. February 19, 2021, $428,000. Mortgage comes from United Wholesale Mortgage. And on that mortgage application, just like the first one, she's got to disclose her liabilities. And she did not say that she owes a bunch of money in taxes. Longboat seems like it's kind of over on the ocean a little bit. So she's moving out. She wants some beachfront now. She's inland. She wants to be on the water. You can see not too far. This one's about 15 hours away. And an even 1,000-mile drive for some nice symmetry. She fills out a loan application for this one, and they ask her, they say, hey, Marilyn, are you presently delinquent or in default on any federal debt? Loans, mortgages, financial obligations, bonds, loans. She says no. But guess what? She did. She owed $45,000 in March of 2020. And so she signs all of these things. I've applied for a mortgage. I've completed the loan. I certify all the information's true and complete. I made no misrepresentations. I fully understand it's a federal crime, punishable by fine and imprisonment, to make any false statement when applying for a mortgage. U.S. Code says so. She did it anyways. Including in the closing documents was a document entitled Attention Settlement Agent. It says the borrowers must attest to the following statements. If any of the information is not true and the borrower cannot attest to any of it, do not proceed with the closing and contact the lender. Below this statement, Mosby identified her current financial statements. She says that she had the home in Florida, home she had purchased earlier in 2020, 3 installment loans, BMW, revolving credit card, but not her federal tax debt or the $45,000 tax lien. Below these entries and above her signature, it says, these are all the liabilities and debts that I've got. There are no additional debts, home equity lines, or mortgages. But there was. And right before closing, on January 28, 2021, she even signed a document saying mortgage fraud is investigated by the FBI. 30 years in federal prison, $1 million in fine. The warning stated, some of the applicable federal statutes may be charged, include, and ran them all through down on the list. And guess what? Marilyn Mosby says that's no problem at all. Got that covered. Signs it. And that's count 4. Now, the feds, they want the property. Whatever they can get, they're going to seize if they can get their hands on it. Here's the quick forfeiture allegation saying if she is convicted, they're going to be able to seek money and property. You see the various U.S. codes. Prosecuting attorney, U.S. Attorney Eric L. Barron, a true bill entered by the foreperson of the grand jury 1/13/2022. Now, Marilyn Mosby, of course, as we heard at the start of this segment, is going to be a fighter. Why might she be somebody who's on the receiving end of an unfair political investigation? Let's listen to what she says.
You guys ready? I will be making a brief statement and not taking questions today because my attorney, A. Scott Bolden, will make himself available at a later time. I thought it was important to be seen and heard today for a number of reasons. First of all, I wanted the citizens of Baltimore to know that as your state's attorney, I am wholly committed to the job and working with my esteemed colleagues in the state's attorney's office to carry out the mission of creating a safer, healthier community for everyone in this city. Nothing is more important than that. I also need citizens who I am blessed to serve to know that I am innocent of the charges that have been levied against me, and I intend to fight with every ounce of energy within my being to prove my innocence and to clear my name.
So she has been indicted. There will be an arraignment, initial court appearance, where the formal charges will be read upon her and she'll have release conditions and she'll go through the formal criminal process, which is very interesting given the fact that she is basically a prosecutor. She's the state attorney for Baltimore, which would be analogous to the lead prosecutor of a big county or a big city. You know, she's prosecuting major crimes. She was prosecuting a number of police officers for the Freddie Gray incident. So now she's going to be a criminal defendant going through the same process. She, of course, is entitled to the same due process, presumption of innocence as everybody else, but it's always a little bit irritating when you have people who are supposed to be held to a higher standard, who are supposed to be swearing an oath to integrity and the Constitution and the rule of law, who are skirting around the rules knowing they can get away with it. It seems extremely dishonest. But here, Mosby's going to sort of pivot this around and say she's been mocked, she's been ridiculed, and really ultimately she's the victim.
What I did not expect was to be personally mocked and ridiculed, sued, or to have to incessantly fight to keep my law license. I did not expect to receive hate mail and death threats and to have the safety of my daughters compromised by the media. I did not expect to need 24-hour armed security. I did not expect to incur personally more than $500,000 in legal bills, defending myself from frivolous investigations and attacks on nearly every front.
Well, that's what happens when you abuse your office. People are going to fight back. So if you are operating outside of the rules, people are going to push you back into the rules, and you're going to have to defend yourself, as you're going to have to do here. Here we have one final clip from Miss Mosby, and she's explaining why she thinks she's the subject of this inquiry. And it all stems back to, of course, Freddie Gray.
I did not expect for an investigation into my professional travel, which I asked for, to somehow snowball into state ethics and state election board inquiries, federal investigations, and ultimately a federal indictment. I'm so disappointed, but unfortunately not shocked, that my family and I find ourselves in this position. You see, ever since I walked down the steps of the War Memorial on May 1st, 2015, announced charges against 6 police officers in the killing of Freddie Gray, I have had a target on my back, and I get it.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so very dramatic, right? The U.S. Department of Justice is her team. It's the Democrats, it's Joe Biden, it's Merrick Garland, it's the same people who are waging this war on domestic terrorists and creating new units at the DOJ and the FBI and blah, 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 blah. The same people who had no issues with Antifa or BLM, the same people who are just like Kamala Harris. In fact, Kamala Harris is in this administration, and Kamala was out here vouching for this woman, saying she was going to be the new pillar of justice, the new standard in our big cities, reforming all of the injustice that, in my opinion, Kamala and Joe Biden had imposed on this country over the 80s and 90s in their wreckage when they were in charge of their different independent various jurisdictions. And so this is Marilyn Mosby, 4 counts, federal indictment. Do you think she's the victim of a political prosecution? Do you think that the FBI is going after this woman because of what she did with Freddie Gray? Or do you think that they just caught her doing something that was dishonest? And shouldn't we hold our public officials to higher standards? They operate with more information and with more power and more opportunity. When they exploit it, they should be held accountable. That's my opinion. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below, and stick around. I'd love it if you subscribed so that we can see each other on the next one.